Consider you have existing project implemented using jQuery and core JavaScript. Now you got some enhancement to be done, and you're thinking of using AngularJS to implement these enhancements. Not a bad idea. But there are some problems we might face while integrating these two together. I mean, if you need to collaborate these two frameworks together, so if you are writing the enhancement using AngularJS and your code is not going to use any part of the existing code, you're lucky and you can proceed without worry. But that seems to be a rare case, right? So what's the problem? So I have my sample HTML to explain the problem. You can see I have divided my HTML page into two sections. One section is my existing jQuery project section, and second one is a new section I need to develop using AngularJS. So what's happening in jQuery section? Nothing special. I have a button labeled JQ button, and I have a click handler applied on a button here in my script block, logging jQuery button click. Then in my Angular section, you can see I'm controlling the section using ng controller. I have a checkbox which I want to use to control the enable disable state of jQuery section button, and a counter to increment and display when someone clicks on the JQ button. Looks simple, right? Let's run and see how it looks like. So what I want to do, when I click on this JQ button, I want to increment the counter here defined on $scope object. But how can I do that? As this click function is getting executed in jQuery context and my $scope object is defined in AngularJS context. So I don't have access to this $scope object here inside my JQ button handler. Similarly, I want to enable or disable JQ button based on the value of JQ button state variable defined here on $scope. And this variable is in AngularJS context. Let's start with the first problem. I mean, enable or disable the state of JQ button. Our $scope object supports some methods. First one is called $watch, which accepts two arguments. First one is the name of the property to watch, and second is a handler function to be executed when the $scope object's property used as a first argument change. And other one is $watch collection, where we pass first argument as object and second as a handler function, which gets called when any of the property in an object change. We're going to use the $watch method here inside my controller to watch for JQ button state property on $scope object, and if it's going to change, I'm going to handle it in this handler function. This handler function gets the new value of this property as argument. Okay, so here inside this function, I'm going to access my jQuery section button, and I'll set its disabled attribute based on new value of JQ button state property. Let's refresh and you can see the button is enabled. Now I'm going to check this checkbox. Cool, the button gets disabled. Uncheck again, the button is enabled now. Awesome. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm going against the rules I have set for controller. I have written DOM access code here inside my controller. Not good, right? It should have been written in a directive. That's right, but as I haven't covered custom directives yet, can you please excuse me for this example? Okay, now we know how to watch properties defined on scope and respond when they change. Next problem is how I'm going to access my scope here, or even how I can call the functions defined on my $scope object from jQuery world. I mean the jQuery context. Do you remember the function angular.element, using which we can access the DOM element in Angular? So I'm going to access my Angular section element, and it actually gives me this element as jQuery element. Then I can call my scope function on it. I think you got it. We have used it when we started this module, right? So this will return me the scope object attached to this DOM element. I'm going to store it in a variable, say scope. Then I'm going to call a function called $apply. And whatever goes inside this function is going to execute in AngularJS context. So I'm going to write a function as argument to this $apply method, and I'm going to call my JQButtonClick method return on $scope object here in my controller using my local scope variable. So we got the $scope using this long statement. Then I'm calling $apply on my scope object and executing the code in AngularJS context. Let's refresh. Click on jQuery button, and there we go. Our counter is getting incremented. So in summary, use $watch or $watch collection method to listen for scope property changes, and use $apply to enter into AngularJS context from any other JavaScript framework.